EMPG Application Series, Budget and Submission.
Welcome to the FY23 EMPG Application Video Series. This is part 5 of the video series and will be the final one. In part 4 of the video series, we covered how to do the EMPG work plan, which was the final form of the application forms section. The application forms section was the third spot, the third section in the application. We'll now be moving on to the budget section, which is here in the fourth section. The budget section is a crucial part of how to organize and frame your grant for this coming year. You will note towards the bottom that the revenue budget section gives you numbers that you put in towards the beginning of the application. The grant funded, the not grant funded, and then you can see here the total direct cost. This was done here at the top under the project information section. If for whatever reason your numbers are not correct at the bottom, you will want to return to this project information section and update your numbers, and then return here to the budget and resume. When you have those numbers correct, now we can begin to work through our budget. You can work through any of these categories in whichever order you would like. A few things to note that might help you. First, management and administration for EMPG is not a common expense. It is there for availability should you need it, but it's not often very common. Similarly, equipment is not often allowed under EMPG, but under certain circumstances can be allowed, and that's why you will see this category here. If you have questions as to whether this applies to you, get in touch with MTDES coordinators and we'll be able to walk you through it. Finally, we covered before the indirect costs. Very few jurisdictions have this as eligible for their EMPG program. If you think you qualify, please get in touch with a grant coordinator and we'll talk you through it. If you're going to try to claim this, in a previous section, there was a place where you needed to upload those indirect cost agreements, and that will be where you need to have that in order to be able to have that as a part of your budget. All of the rest of these are common categories and budget categories used to build a budget. We can begin here with the personnel salary. And you'll notice that the category is selected here for us. We want to be able to go through and determine whether you're an FTE, full-time employee, or part-time employee, PTE. This helps us to be able to distinguish what type of salary you will be claiming. Notice all of the instructions here for building this sort of budget category. So we'll want to go through and we can specify here the FTE. It's helpful to have a name for this, and so we can say this gives us an idea that it's an FTE, that it's salary, and the name of the individual. From here we want to put in the direct cost. This is the actual direct cost, and so this would be if Bob were paid $50,000 a year. I can click off of that and make sure that this number comes out correct. And then we'll want to say that it's grant funded, which then gives us the capability to determine the match. The best way to do this will be to have it marked as percentage, and then make sure to get rid of the 0, and then put in 0.5. In Amplifund, it's crucial that you put in 0.5 because when you click off of the field, you'll notice that it then changes to 50%. Amplifund calculates the percentage based off of the decimal system. So in this case, you would want to put 0.5 to make it 50%. This allows Amplifund then to be able to calculate the grant funded versus the match. Now you can move into the narrative and give some sort of description that you feel might be helpful for not only us at MTDES to know, but maybe something that you would like to track. An example is, any number of things can be put into the narrative field that is helpful for this budget category for everybody to be able to see and note and recognize. Once you've filled in all of the fields, you can then click Create. Notice that because we put in the 50% match, it has now broken out everything into 50% chunks and given us the total direct. We can continue this on for each of the categories as we move along. So we'll do similarly, and we'll claim here we have the name, and this personnel or non-personnel is not important. You can disregard this in most cases, as we're going to be tracking the personnel costs through our categories. The direct costs here, we'll say, can be $15,000. It is, remember, going to be grant funded, and so this is where we go through the percentage again. So we can put in 0.5, and now we can see that again, there's our direct cost, there's the grant funded, and it gives us the total budgeted. You're not required to put in a narrative, but it is helpful, so feel free to put that in. Whatever you feel is important. And again, you'll notice that it breaks that out. Similarly with utilities, we want to have a separate line item for each of these. So you may not have all of these examples, but you may say that under utilities, you would want an electrical. And we can say, oh, well, we're going to associate probably about $1,200 a year, and that's the direct cost. It is grant funded, and we would go through the percentage again. Again, I can double check my numbers, and everything looks correct. So we can give a description here of that. So we would say, the utilities that are eligible just for the EM program. And again, you'll notice it broke that out. Now, again, if we have other utilities, we can add those here. So in another example, we could say that we could include rent under this one, and we'll say, oh, we'll put in $600 for this one, cheap rent, but it would be nice if everybody's rent was that cheap, and then we'll move on. And again, our numbers calculate correct. We see the grant funded is 50%. We can put in so you'll notice that in each of these, it gives us the totals for each of these. This also, notice that it will give us the total for the category. It's also helpful to realize how each category is building up. As you continue through your budget, you'll notice what is going to end up remaining to be able to allocate. This number, the overall budget cost, needs to be 0 in order to be able to finalize the budget, mark it as complete, and continue. Continue down through each of the categories, putting in each line item as needed. Make sure that each time you do this, that you are putting in the cash match requirement. Double check behind to make sure that you're getting the correct numbers. This will ensure that your process later is easier and you don't end up having to come back and review it again. For the sake of time, I will not go through and allocate all $200,000, but it is important that you make sure to do this. When you're done and all of the numbers match up, and this total overall budget cost would then be zero, you could then come here to mark it as complete. This error message would no longer appear. You can then move on to save and continue. This will bring you to the final submission page. It will inform you that you're about to submit your application and will give you some of the helpful information. Notice that we have some red text here, which indicates to us that certain things haven't been completed and that there are budget errors. If you have trouble submitting and you notice that this is grayed out, you must go back and review your application for these errors. If you encounter errors and you are not sure where those are at, feel free to contact MTDS and we will attempt to help you find those and change those before the application deadline. Notice here that you can download and review the application document form that will be easy to reference. Once you've completed all of the steps and all of the circles above are marked with check marks, this page should no longer have red text and the submit button will then be green. When you are confident that all of your information is complete and ready to submit, you can click the submit button. As long as you have not submitted the application, you will always be able to go in and review, edit, and add to your application. Once you have submitted your application to Montana Disaster and Emergency Services, you will no longer be able to edit this application. If you have done so and feel that you need to make some changes, contact us and we can send the application back to you for revisions. That completes the FY23 EMPG application process. We hope that you found these videos helpful and useful. And if you have questions or run into any issues, please feel free to get in touch with us. Thank you and good luck with your application.